Okay, I'm super excited to speak with Emily today, mostly because I think the topic that we can explore is one that is oftentimes not talked about, especially for women, especially in the realm of survival skills or wilderness skills. And it definitely touches home to me in my journey and my exploration of what it means to be a woman, to be a mom in my power and divine essence. And so, welcome, Emily. We're super happy to have you. And we love having people just share their origin story to start and tell people where they can find you and how you became, this version of who you are right now. And before you start, Emily is vibrantly pregnant right now. So if you can't see her on the screen and you're listening, yeah, we're also catching her at this moment in her life.
Totally. Thank you so much for having me, Daria and Jeff. So yeah, I'm 38 weeks, coming up to 38 weeks pregnant. So yeah, feeling very like the veil is thinning. I feel like I've been in this extended plant medicine journey for like a long time, and it's reaching its like peak experience very soon. So that's been really interesting. I am the owner and operator of Maiden Medicine, and this is an all-encompassing reclamation and a journey back to robust womanhood. And that encompasses um, working with, base nourishment, understanding feminine, how to nourish feminine physiology, how to tend to the biostructural components of our pelvis, of our female body, as well as the emotional and spiritual elements that are all wrapped up and interdigitated and woven into all of our tissues, coming into this time where there's such an electric field of feminine energy resurging, and really calling this masculine energy to meet that at such a potent time. So we're in that age of Aquarius where there's so much integration happening, and so that's really what I serve. And my origin story is I still am a very intense person, but in my previous iterations, which it's so funny you asked that question because I've been kind of stewing on it. I'm like, how did I become this? Like, this is the most me I've ever been.
Mm.
And yet I come from this background of being this outboard motor. I grew up on a ranch, like just using my physicality all the time to be at the height of athletic achievement. And I played collegiate basketball where we won a couple national championships. And so it was really like ingrained in me how to drive and override myself continually in order to have this certain level of success. And that then transferred into a really wild career in CrossFit, where I think at one point I was the eighth fittest woman in the world or something like that. Um, and that whole journey then culminated in a lot of like a how could I describe it? A self-sabotaging, very dark, very like self-betrayal expression that just catapulted me out of this sphere of athleticism into healing modalities. And it was a very painful journey. And a lot of that had to do, it was centered around my sexuality and how I express my sexuality, and also wrapped up in an abortion story and some trauma bonding. But ultimately, all of these wounds to my feminine were portals in to really begin to soften and understand myself and remember the power of femininity. And so this is what I love to do. And I love to support women who also come from that intense background, who have that intensity in them. and really help understand and nurture this beautiful, intense feminine energy that once that sacred union happens between our masculine and feminine, we come out of those distortions. Ooh, that's when we start to dance this sacred dance. And it benefits not only the woman and her relationship to herself, but her relationship with her partner, and then her community, and then the collective consciousness, the collective womb, let's say, as we heal the matrix. So that's my origin story. And yeah.
I mean, most of our listeners probably won't know you, and maybe we can share before we start that we first listened to Emily, I want to say over a year ago, was definitely before I was pregnant, on Paul Check's podcast. So if you are curious, you can check that out. That episode's really, really great. And yeah, I mean, is there anything you want to go
Well,
into?
I think it'd be pivotal for you to share your piece. But you said like overriding, and I can echo that too in a different way. But I came from maybe the opposite of you, where I was the couch potato video game playing kid, and I had a lot of health problems when I was younger. And then when I got like later in high school, then I found a love for sports. And then by the time I got into my mid-20s, then I kind of started transforming my body to that more of an athlete. And you can override things. And I find even now, like I did amateur kickboxing and Muay Thai, and there was a point where, if I don't move my body a certain way, I feel like I had a Ford Focus and I turned it into a Ferrari, but if I don't continue to use it like a Ferrari, like it starts to hurt and things don't feel good. But Daria's story is, you know, similar in different ways, but like an overarching, if we do the hero's journey, a very similar piece with the overriding of our physicality and our biology. And I think it'd be important just for you to share that.
Yeah, I mean, when you said like the intense person, I like laugh because that is so me. And for those of people listening and who know me like 3-4 years ago before Jeff and who see me now, I was sharing this with you, but I throw a lot of people off now because I'm slowly stepping into, yes, I'm actually allowed to be a really strong wilderness skills woman who teaches these ancestral skills, and I'm very strong. I love being in my body. It requires strength to tan a hide, start to finish by yourself, or to, have the stamina to butcher an animal, start to finish. And for me, my journey, when Jeff met me, it was like my masculine was just screaming and took over. And then Jeff bringing in his masculine power, energy, force was like this allowance for my body to be like, oh, okay, I don't have to be that anymore. And then boom, my my feminine, I was like, it was like almost, permission to start exploring my femininity. And it's like gets me a little bit nervous sharing that because a lot of people don't know that part of my story. But
Well, maybe get
yeah.
a piece of like teaching drum and how that kind of affected your biology.
Yeah, so one, like where it really got to the tipping point was I was in a really pretty intense 2-month survival immersion where I was living in a wigwam, and I lost my menstrual cycle, and that was a massive awakening for me that I had gone too far. And I didn't know, like I came back from that experience. I knew my body was off because I was just pushing so much, and it was in the winter. And then I got home and I was definitely holding these questions of like, this was my edge. I met my edge where I lost too much of one side of myself because yeah, losing my menstrual cycle was that like alarming call. So Yeah, potentially there's some threads in there that you can speak to in your approach to healing or these modalities that you use. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, one thing I do want to say, like, and this is often what I hear from women, like when they come work with me, they're like, I'm too much in my masculine. Well, I'm like, actually, you're in your distorted masculine because the masculine is such a beautiful energy. And when we say, like, oh, I'm too much in my masculine, well, you're in this distortion that ultimately our over culture promotes, which is pushing past anything, any kind of intuitive sense in our body in order to get an outcome.
Mm.
And this pervades almost every level of our psyche, which is like from our sexuality, pushing past our body just to have that orgasm, or pushing past our body, our emotional body, in order to maybe get that sale or to get that client. Pushing past our physiology to fit within this man-made world. And so these are all these distortions that are really like pulling us all the time, and it's really a distortion that's set against life. And I think what you're speaking to is that um you have this inner warrior, you have this really strong sense of I can go out and I can survive in the wilderness. Like there's nothing more like savage than that, and like pushing that edge. And I think it's important to go explore those edges in a way. Um, However, when we come back to starting to nurture our feminine, that in turn engenders into really healing and nurturing the masculine, which the masculine is the Shiva. It's like the striving for peace, for connection, for pure presence, embodied presence and stillness. And so that's a really important like distinction I think that needs to be made, because the masculine is like we have that within us, and then when you felt that in Jeff, it was like, oh, I can finally soften and just be myself and like be the Shakti, which is feminine, which is this movement. It's like this big ocean of emotional waves after emotional waves. And in the survival skill set or in CrossFit or in basketball, emotion is like bad. It is not good. You have to like shove that down as much as possible. And so when you're in the presence of pure masculine, like the masculine energy, you can now unwind. And so that's what I teach women, is that you can actually start that process within yourself before you even meet a partner. Of course, when you do meet that partner, when you meet that frequency that needs to heal you, he takes you deeper, way deeper than you could ever take yourself. But I do teach women, because I exited out of a really painful relationship of codependency and a lot of distortion. I was like, well, I have to go all in on me. And I began to meet these different distortions in the feminine field and the masculine field, start cleaning up those fractures in our lineage that we've all been handed, and we enculturate. And again, like the essence of the patriarchy, and I'm not here to bash patriarchy at all, because trying to get into a fight with patriarchy is like using, one of my teachers said, is like trying to get us into a sword fight with the wind. It's like, it's just not going to work, right? But the essence of the patriarchy is the fear that is produced to try to manage outcomes. And so that's what everyone's just hustling off this fear energy all the time. And that just totally depletes life force energy or sexual energy, ultimately, right? We're just all in this state, this gripping of, I better win or else I'm a failure. I'm not going to survive. So that's one distinction I'd like to make. But ultimately, what I do bring women into is this like a consciousness shift of reception. And I'm sure, Dariya, you felt all of a sudden that once you could soften, you didn't have to like fight in this like the survival space anymore. You could finally start receiving in a whole new way. And reception, or the feminine, that primordial energy, let's say, is just not valued in our culture. And so unwinding all of these aspects of that's, all these weeds that have been planted in our garden, um, is the process that I do of like reception's not safe. I have to brace. I have to work hard. I have to grind. And that tension that's created in the body is wound into our physiology, wound into our tissues, wound into our womb. Because if I can't even receive myself, how can I receive a man? How can I receive my partner? How can I receive life itself, which is this big, strong, godlike, masculine-like energy? And that is represented in a woman's tissues, in her vulva, in her womb, in her hips, in her jaw, the way she holds her posture. And my contention is that when a woman begins to heal this part of herself, she can finally, like, this is a huge consciousness shift. It's a huge paradigm shift. It's a return to trust, a deep trust in herself, in life. And this will then in turn, like, it collectively completely shifts the energy of the world. And it really begins with the woman, because the woman sets the tone, the man sets the structure, the container. Yeah.
So you had mentioned some distortions in masculine energy. What is a common or distortions of feminine energy that show up?
Well, that's a really great question, Dariya, and I think we can often look to how, like, our mothers and how they live within their own relationships. That's that mother wound that we all carry with us, and oftentimes it looks like an intense neediness, collusion to hate on the masculine, because that's how, like, they learn how to get what they want. There's manipulation. There's a feeling of can't ever be satisfied, or like an emptiness, like I'm not satiable. Um, it can feel like, yeah, I would say like that's kind of like some of those aspects, and you probably have felt them in your own mother. And even as you do your own healing, it often triggers her, like saying, oh, I'm going to rest more, or I'm going to make these choices that I'm choosing to not do the thing that I know I can do. And that in itself is like super triggering for a lot of women, but also super healing, because we're unwinding generations of obligation and resentment. So yeah, I would say obligation and resentment are probably the two biggest wounds of the distorted feminine. Yeah, you're laughing. Yeah.
Well,
I think, yeah, like beautifully said too. And I think it's not, your expertise is obviously in women, but it goes both ways. Because just as you were speaking about that, like, I think of my childhood, and I was raised with a single mom, so I don't know my father. And I was raised a lot with my grandparents, but my grandfather didn't work. He had a work injury years before. So a lot of my grandmother, aunts, godmother, like a lot of feminine. So like I was very emotional as a kid, and then had this, father trauma. But then there was so much feminine energy around me, like, getting emotional, crying, like all these, like up into my teenage years until, I found you know, other boys or men that, I could be like, oh, I like that part. Like I can mimic that archetype, and then changing that archetype in myself to be like, where I felt like the victim, or the, almost the classic hero's journey of like, I felt small, like the victim, the runt, and then get to the point where, okay, like I'm confident physically and mentally, emotionally, all these different things. So it's like, it's amazing, just those archetypes, how we can find, it doesn't matter male or female or what your background is, you're gonna find these archetypes and play them out. And if you don't discover them with intention, you might just keep repeating it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I also like the point you mentioned, just going for the sale. It's like, yeah, it's beyond our comprehension how we might shoehorn ourselves into a archetype or a gender energy role without even thinking about it. And Dariya, so her situation was, when I had met her, so she had did the kind of green hippie stuff, and then she was into the survival, and then it was like very nature spiritual / survival world, but she was living alone in the woods for several years. So when I found her, she was not only embodying physically the masculine, but also had to don that as like a defense mechanism, as a home keeper, like having to live on her land and like fend for herself and all these different things. So it's like it embodied so many different roles. So even when I came along, she still had, she had to, let's say put the mask on of the masculine just to, like if you wanted to go to the store and you wanted to buy building materials, like in so many ways that we wouldn't, you just brush off, you'd be like, oh, Emily was in CrossFit. Of course she had to be, like, oh, did you see how big her muscles were? Like, oh my gosh, she had to be masculine. It's like, no, you don't get it. Like, it's not just, what physically it could be like, oh, the fact that you have to go deal with like, the machismo guy at the auto repair place, it could be so many different times where you have to don that masculine role. And some might be for just a moment where you have to assert yourself, and some might have to be for a lifetime, whether it's like the boss at your job or a coworker, or maybe you're like, I don't know, maybe you're the head nurse on the nursing floor and you can't be too feminine with them because all the hens will step out of line. So you gotta, lay down the law with a little masculine energy. And it was interesting how you said that. Like, it's not just, being a CrossFit athlete or being a survivalist. It's like, hey, maybe you're just in a position to bring the money home or, raise your kids, where you have to step into that.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up like an interesting point, because like I definitely was always putting like, no wonder I put on like all this like masculine armor, because I thought that was my pathway, like literal muscle, right? We'll say, to get strong and to be like taken seriously, because I thought that was my pathway to freedom and influence. And because the feminine models growing up to me looked really restrictive. And I'm sure Dariya, yeah, you can totally relate. You're like, I don't want to live like how my mom lived. I don't want to live how most women live, because that doesn't look fun. Like that looks like something like, again, obligation, resentment. And I don't want to live in that sphere. So I did everything I could to not be within that realm. But the deeper I go into the feminine, and the feminine's really funny because she just keeps like pulling you deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like very endless. I actually have found that the softer I become in that feminine and like really fall into the depths of that yin, the more power I yield, or wield. So even in the face of someone that is confrontational or someone that's in their own distortion or pain, this is what's so powerful about the feminine, is that she can like envelop it and hold it and make that person who's in their pain really uncomfortable. Now, is that hard to do on a nursing floor where there's like a hierarchy and like that classic like bullying that every like nursing people talk about? Absolutely. Like it's hard to go into those realms, and there is a certain level of protection that a woman who's attuned would have to understand going into those spaces. But I have found the more that I really employ the power of like, if you even look at like the Venetian courtesans, like they knew how to use like their femininity to influence kings and policy and education. And so there is this certain power to it that can't be named or even nailed down specifically. It's an embodied sense. So what if we did have this world where women could go into these places, they knew how to nourish themselves on such a receptive level that they could go in dripping with this energy into these different spheres, these different realms, and really start writing the relationships because they're doing that within themselves. And that just pours out energetically, where you don't even have to like deal with that bullshit anymore, basically, because it can't survive in the face of the like this feminine power.
Mhm.
I think we're
Yeah.
seeing a bit of a renaissance with that right now,
Yeah.
for sure. The homesteading, the moms who want to have the traditional, like, yeah, give me 6 kids, like I'm ready, like I'm here to be the, like, you know, to receive the home and welcome the family and provide, you know, like, yeah, I think we're seeing a little renaissance of that.
Yeah, and I think like a beautiful pairing of like how like there's such a I've learned from a lot of amazing like business teachers who are doing feminine led, soul led business that really serves and really nurtures people in the community. And I like what Finding Polaris is about. It's just like really it's a supportive ecosystem that you're creating that produces more beauty and gets people in touch with the beauty within themselves. And like when a person knows the beauty within themselves and knows that there's no sexual shame anymore, and that they understand what shame and guilt does to like human sexual energy, this is like all the gates of freedom are within. And now we have a world where we're not spending it on really stupid, we're not spending our money on stupid shit anymore. We're like really investing it into the places that provide the experience, that provide the connection that we're all yearning for so deeply, and which our overculture distorts all the time, that we're going to find it somewhere else with a dopamine hit. Right now we're coming back to like the oxytocin based engagement. And I think that is really part of like this neurochemical renaissance that we're experiencing, and that people like yourselves are really providing the space to go do that.
I would love to circle back on the word nourishment and just add a quick story. So after giving birth to Shazandra, I got my first menstrual cycle at about 5 months postpartum. And I had the most, I still do, intense creative energy forces come through me every time I bleed, that like I'm not even kidding. Like I can't even sleep. I'm just like vibrating with ideas. And then after my cycle, I just kind of go back. And then I know I'm starting to bleed again. And it's like swoosh, like like almost like it's quite intense. And I mean, I've only bled a few times postpartum, but it's definitely different than before. Like the shift of birth has changed my cycle, just how it shows up, the energies around it, and also the length and all of that. It's very new to me right now. So I'm really enjoying that process of just like my menstrual cycle just really showing me like, wow, you're a different body now after giving birth to this baby. But circling back to nourishment, I'd love for you to talk about that, because prior, you know, in this journey and transition for me, I was fasting like so much before, yeah, like a lot. And I definitely was under eating and over exercising, like this common story. And it was not good for me. I would say mostly like hormonally was like a big confusion for my body.
It was gut and hormone stuff. Well, as soon as we met, like thanks to like work from people like Paul and you know other giants in the health field, like that's my kind of passion the last 15 years has been into natural health stuff.
And Jeff called me out for sure. He was
Yeah.
like, Dariya, this isn't serving you. I don't even think I've ever like really fasted since. I'm like the opposite now. Food is my medicine, and like fats and proteins and all the good things my body craves when it craves. And I would love for you to speak on this, especially for women, because a lot of the women that come to our programs, it's kind of this act of like stripping, in many ways. And part of it, it's like, we see women, what would be like? the
Well, I
verbiage
just
that
like,
show
I
up?
would imagine, just use you as an example, like, so Dariya would fast, she would eat, organic, relatively healthy, if outward 10,000 foot view, you'd be like, wow, she's probably in the upper like 10% of North America. But then when we met, you were what, like 30 pounds heavier?
Yeah, maybe.
Like weight being a number, because I know what that's all about with fighting. Like that number can move constantly, but she was really puffy. You could tell she was inflamed.
Mhm.
And then I just said, like, hey, like your gut's inflamed. I can tell from this, this, and this. Your hormones are probably messed up and you're inflamed. And then, she did a radical diet change and she went carnivore for 3 months. And I said, like, it's not about vegan or carnivore, because she's done vegan. I've done raw vegan. Like, we've done swings. I said, it's just like doing like elimination, and you're just gonna, you know, just focus on this one thing and push out all the other things. And I just, on a whim, that's what kind of called to my soul to recommend. And then, yeah, she just went through like a monumental change. All like the weight dropped off like super fast. Tons of your symptoms went away.
Mhm.
But it wasn't because she was drinking Coca-Cola and, like she was eating salads and eating meat and good grains and all the stuff. But it was just, her specific body and her needs. And I guess her, I could say wounds, I guess, like the damage done previously that dictated the necessity of what needed to come ahead.
Yeah, I love that you point to that, because I have women come to me all the time, but they're like, but I eat clean and exercise all the time. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly the issue. Like, let's take like massive steps back, because what I teach and what I'm really invested in is progesterone centric nourishment.
Mm.
So we are in a time, in a culture where most women's progesterone is so deficient and their estrogen is overtaking their bodies. Their livers are not doing the specific jobs that, because it just doesn't have the energy or the glucose to do it. We're living in that time right now. And again, beyond like nourishment to me does not just mean obviously like the actual like physical act of eating and like the nutrient density that a woman needs and the consistency that she needs. There's something underneath that, and it's like that is kind of the shadow that is driving her to fast, to be in that intensity, to not give the body what it needs. And usually it's because there's some kind of driver that's like, I'm not good enough. I need to go harder in order to prove my worth as like a being. That's maybe just one example of something that's underlying. And when we're in the grips of that shadow all the time, that creates a ton of cortisol. And when that cortisol is coursing through the system, of course you're going to wake up and not feel hungry at all. You're been fasting, or you've been fasting through the night, so your cortisol is actually at its highest in the morning, and even more so if you're a woman that's typically stressed out. And rest, her nervous system, rest maybe throughout her whole childhood and her whole womanhood has felt like a risk, because in our culture rest does feel like a risk. Reception feels like a risk to the body, right? It's not safe. So that hormonal cascade will continue over time. And what's interesting is that within our hypothalamus, that's housed within the limbic membrane. And the limbic system has everything to do with it's our mammalian brain, how we're interpreting signs and signals, if we're safe, if we're not safe, making meaning behind the signals of our environment. And then that'll in turn affect the hypothalamus and the pituitary, with that high cascade of cortisol. Then the progesterone is not getting into the receptor sites to nourish the body, to balance out the yin and the yang, the estrogen and the progesterone. So over time, we're just like driving our bodies into the ground, and that creates a whole host of symptoms: cold hands and feet, loss of period or really painful periods, or dysmenorrhea of some sort. That could be like thinning hair. That could be like intense mood swings, anxiety and depression, digestive issues, IBS, painful sex, like the list just goes on and it builds, and it's like, so we have to come into this emotional understanding. And this is where I do a lot of my work. Like that's almost the foundation before nourishment. And then when we get into progesterone centric nourishment, when she started to work with the emotional drivers, that the unseen in our psyche, then she can start actually assimilating those nutrients, because we can eat all the nutrient dense food we want, but if I don't feel safe in my body, if I have beliefs around my value as a woman, which our culture loves to really slam into us, then that's just like the psyche won't relent to the natural processes of feminine physiology. And so that's one aspect of it. But then, yes, of course, nourishment is like almost every meal, and I can hear this in your voice, Dariya, like food is medicine. It becomes this devotional act of like, no, I'm not going to let my blood sugar get so low that I start shaking, or I'm like get really anxious and heady. Like I'm going to eat my breakfast within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. I'm going to make sure there's lots of fats and proteins. I'm going to eat gelatinous meats instead of just lean meats. So a ton of gelatinous meats. I'm going to start cooking meat stocks to get all that glycine and collagen and to heal my digestive system. I'm not going to worry about if I go out for a burger on Friday night and think that that's wrong or bad, or that there's some kind of dogma around that. I'm going to nourish. I'm going to eat the fats. I'm going to eat every 3 to 4 hours. I'm going to have these nutrient dense snacks, and like almost mini meals. And like all of this starts to feed into like, oh yeah, like this is how good I can feel. This is how energized I need to be. And what's wild is that too, when you're not having that shadow drive you to go work out or to be more intense, like your body just naturally finds its gorgeous set point. You don't have to try as hard to do anything. You're like, I can't believe I worked out that much. And this is coming from a woman I was 11% body fat, like washboard abs, like luckily I never lost my period. I have no idea how that happened, but I was always had very painful period, was highly emotional in my luteal phase, but and did also go through like the carnivorism route as well. And yeah, really began to understand that like feminine physiology, it's so beautiful to support that cycle and tend to that cycle, understand how our menstrual cycle taps into that. And once you're in that place, it's like, oh yeah, being a woman's really amazing. And it's actually so juicy. And I don't have to fear my period, and I don't have to like look at food with disdain. I don't have to hold my belly in, which like contracts all those muscles, like the psoas, which is holding the uterus around the broad ligaments, and like just tightening up all that tissue all the time. I don't have to do that anymore. I can have like a big full meal and rub my belly and be soft bellied and juicy and happy. But at the same time, I don't have to give up my survival skills. I don't have to give up the fact that I love going into big waves and surfing with my man. Like I still get to do all that, but I respect my nature. So yeah, I think tending to our nourishment has so many different levels to it. But I would say for me, like where I see the most damage is the underlying emotional avoidance or backflipping over these big components of our worth, our value, and our ability to rest as women. So if we don't examine those beliefs first, the nourishment, the expansion into the feminine just like won't happen.
Yeah, one amazing example for me that ties into that was when I was, and I see a lot of women who do this, so we learn about toxic products and, you know, we're trying to eliminate that. And I went like total extreme surprise where I was like, I'm not going to use anything, you know, like I'm not going to wash my hair,
Yeah.
all of that. And then I met Jeff, and Jeff,
Wardrobe of like
oh,
30 faded organic shirts from the secondhand store. None of them fit properly.
and
She
Jeff,
looked like a Flintstone.
no, it's good. It doesn't bother me
But
at all.
like, I get it. Like, we're both pretty extreme, so it's
Yes.
But the piece I wanted to share, so when I met Jeff again, he was like, why don't you put like really high quality oils on your face? And I was like, wow, well, I've never like spent that much money on a really high quality product to just, you know, wash my face and like put oil. And then I did it, like, you know, like just sparked. And this is coming from Jeff, who's actually like buys way nicer stuff than I do, probably to this day too. But he was like, I think like, why don't you look at this company? And they had really high, and I was like, wow. And I started doing it. And then I like almost started falling in love with myself again with like, you know, self-care, especially during the pregnancy, like putting oils on my belly all the way to the end. Like it just was, it's like an invitation to touch yourself, whether it's your face or your belly or your legs or your toes, whatever, it doesn't matter, your yoni. It's like the oils was like this conduit, and I felt like this is the self-worth piece. It's like, oh, I'm not worth a really beautiful oil. I'm not worth self-massage or, you know, looking at myself in the mirror and just saying like, I'm taking care of my skin. This is to hydrate, and, you know, like just small things like that. So it's not even about the oil, but it's the underlying like worthiness that I wasn't.
It was almost like a value structure of like, well, okay, like if I can stretch my money as long as possible and live as low on the like, you know, carbon / like no one knows I exist level, and like you just don't spend too much on this. Like I can keep these pair of shoes for the next million years. Like we'll just keep patching them. And like it's beautiful too, because like if I were to say like if there's a theme to this interview, it's like, yes, there's extremes and they're both necessary, because you would never have got to that wall that you needed to hit to find your true potential. And that goes for everything. Like had you not gone that far down one edge, you would have never came back to the middle to realize like, oh, okay, like I can still value the environment myself, not want to destroy the earth, not want to be a burden on people, but also like I can take care of myself, and I'm worth $50 or $100 oil, or like, you know, sometimes people like, how much does that cost? Like, I don't give a shit how much it costs. Like I want it for me, for my health right now, and like I'll justify any food or supplement. It's like I don't look at the price. I need to eat, and that's the best quality I can find. But yeah, like that's like a value thing, because if you know, if it was outfits for you, then it would have been outfits, you know, like if it was, but like that was your value ethic, I guess, like hierarchy.
Yeah, and I think I love that you talk about the oiling and the investment in the oils, because when a woman is cortisoled out all the time, because there's been these micro starvations of like, oh, I don't want to be that burden, or I don't want to be this or that. And typically when we are thinking like that, when it's black or white, we're in a wounded state. And it's when we start to maybe move through the feels of that, we drop into this much more expansive state where there's so many creative solutions. Like, oh, I can use this oil and like adorn myself and like nourish myself, which brings about this oxytocin flush, right? Which is self-trust, self-compassion, self-love. And we open up a whole cosmos of creative solutions to so many of our, you know, the things that we are challenged with daily as humans. So, and that one of them is like, as a woman, investing in herself, investing in her sexuality, investing in her sovereignty and autonomy, and understanding herself from like all these deeper layers that go beyond convention, that go beyond narratives that have been handed to us. And yeah, just like that act of oiling your body and choosing, like that holds such an energetic frequency that shifts your entire the paradigm of how you show up in the world. And that's huge if we can get women to start like really valuing that aspect of themselves, and having access to not just more like money, like the tender, but all the abundance that's around them and how they can resource themselves, how they can ask. I ask for things, ask to receive. Once we start unwinding this, now there's an actual energy flow between the masculine and feminine, or the left brain and the right brain, between partners. If there's this, I can't receive, I don't want, I want to stay in this place that makes me feel like I'm, like I would love to have met you like a couple of years ago, Daria, just to see like this woman of the woods who's,
You would have
yeah,
never found her.
yeah.
It's true. I was hiding, oh, in so many ways.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, it's like that's such a huge shift, and it's so much healing, and it creates this juicy polarity that I think a lot of us that we've lost in our this world, and women have lost touch with. But the greatest gift we can give anyone is to receive them fully, and wholeheartedly, and not have to brace for it, not have to think it's bad. Understand the conditioning that comes up every time we receive, which is guilt and shame, or I'm too much, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm doing something bad for the world, or whatever that story is. So that's really powerful.
I think a common way many people have seen this, and I know because I experienced it, but I've heard from other teachers before, is, my grandmother had a heart attack. I think it was like 3 or 6 months after she retired. So she retired early from a teaching position and then had a heart attack. She wasn't in the best physical shape to begin with, and probably wasn't valuing her health, but the example that I've heard many teachers reference is it's the mother who gives and never stops to take care of themselves. It's like a very archetypical pattern of, you're the matriarch for the family, but then you never stop and like, okay, I need to take care of myself so I can be there for another 30, 40, 50 years or whatever it might be. And then end up cutting their time here short because they've almost in a way as a matriarch, but in such a hyper masculine state that they've burnt themselves out and neglected themselves, and to be there as the mother, matriarch, grandmother, aunt for all the other people in the group, family, tribe, their community, and then it finally catches up with them.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would say women are conditioned from a very early age, especially our mothers and grandmothers, based off of like the times they grew up in too, that in order to be a person of value, they had to go past their wanting and past their willing. And what does that exactly what happens? Like when you go past your wanting and your willing, you're in resentment land. And even though like I'm sure like not saying your grandma was like a resentful person, but it picks away over time, and it's like it just depletes and dries out the tissues, it dries out like their heart, and and that is the martyr that we see, and that's one part of this, like that shadow, or that's imbalanced, that we see all of our mothers, like I've seen it in my own mother, like that martyrdom, and it never works out. It never works out when you're trying to constantly intuit everybody else's needs and overstepping what you're feeling in your body.
They almost I can't remember the Greek myth, if it's Sisyphus who has to push the stone up the mountain for eternity. They almost don that archetype to say like, I'm the matriarch, my kids are in high school, or now they're having their own kids, and like it just progresses through stages where they're just like, no, this is my stone to push. And it's like they almost forget about themselves and just say, no, I'm just here to like grind myself to dust to get this family through whatever, because things come up, deaths or challenges or children or divorces, and there's all these ups and downs, and they pick themselves as the rock or the one object that just continues to push, like the workhorse, or like the pack mule, or that just, I'm not going to stop, and I'm just here to be that anchor that everyone can hold on to, and I just keep going. And it's not about me anymore, it's about everybody else.
Totally. And I think that to have an embodied mother, embodied, juicy, sensual, eros-filled mother has not been a path that has been shown to us. And so Dariya, you are leading the way, my dear.
And it's still like, I'm still finding my way. It's not like, I don't have a lot of women moms who are like really strong in that. So I'm just trying to find my own path through just like remembering my beliefs, what I do want to embody, how I want to show up for this baby, future babies, and all that. Because I mean, I didn't have a lot of like people rooting for me for this birth. So I was just like, Jeff and I kept our circle small. We were super centered in our vision for the birth. And then it happened. And, and it was just like, I'm staying here. This is my compass. It's so easy to get swayed by other people. And yet there is a piece that like, I do get a little sad about that, because yeah, I wish I had like really epic women to look up to. And now sometimes I feel like the only ones I can get glimpses of are online, but I know that that's fake. Like, I know that that's fake, but it's like, hey, there's a woman that's like, just through what she's sharing, I can relate to like, ooh, there's a little bit of something that I am hoping to embody in how she's embodying, because she's down that path just a little bit more than me, because in Sudbury, there's not a ton of women who are like fully in that. And
I think we're in uncharted territory. And I think I heard it really well said is, God brought down all these beautiful, if you want to call them watchers or messengers, everyone with a message, or like they're here to make the change, but we're spread out all over. So we're not near each other. And I think that's kind of what because everyone's in their little spot, and it's like, there's no one else like me, and they might find one other person, and like, Jesus, like everyone kind of feels alone, but they have this like burning message, and the internet's just like allowing us all to connect.
Isn't that amazing? It's like, this is why we're like living in the jackpot times, because there are all these people who are like, we're making connections. Like, I work with a lot of women somehow from like the Midwest, and they're like, there's nobody here to like be freaky and like be I'm like, what? I'm getting all you girls together. Like, there's the community that we can build online is so amazing. And yes, and what you're speaking to, Dariya, is mother hunger. Where are our grandmas? Where are our mothers that are tending to this eros-filled, radically reclaiming receptive life? It's not there. And so we're tending those edges, and it can be very isolating, can be very lonely. But I love how that you have to fiercely protect your integrity with your body. Like, no, I know this to be true. Like, I know this about myself. And to wear that in Sudbury, Ontario is freaking huge, like that. And you just your presence alone, because you're doing this work, and you're understanding this beautiful feminine, this sensuality that is your birthright, that is the most healing force in the world. You will just trigger people like automatically. And that's what any women that comes to work with me, whether in like my group program or like one-on-one, it's like, once you start knowing this, like, yeah, you're just going to trigger everybody. And that's okay, because you're also going to give so much permission to so many people just by embodying who you are. And the embodied woman has been denigrated for all of history, and it can be really scary for a lot of women. And not only the women, it was the men too. Like, if we look back at the witch trials, there were these sensually embodied medicinal women who knew. and who knew how to work with eros, who knew how to be in the temples, even let's say pre-patriarchal times, like egalitarian times. And those men and those women were persecuted. The men who loved those women, who supported those. So that lives in our collective consciousness. So as soon as you start swimming into another stream, everyone is just like, whoa, this is too much. Like, there's something wrong with you. And also continual projections of their pain onto you. So it is, you are stepping into this really big role, because the projections just only increase, the triggers of other people increase. But again, the feminine is this all enveloping, encompassing energy that heals it, because we can have compassion for those people, because you once knew that level of disconnection and how painful that was. And that's like the healing force behind all of this. And the biggest question is, why is the feminine abandoning the feminine? Why are we doing that? And your return to it, your healing, your love, you falling in love with this part of yourself is just, it's has massive ripple effects in the world.
And that was, a big piece of when I was choosing, or I would say it was a collective. I would say she was included in it as well, like how we were choosing to welcome this birth as like my first rite of passage into mother. It felt so important for me to protect that. Yeah, for so many ways. But my mom's mom gave birth at home, and that was normal. And then in one generation, my mom birthed in the hospital, all vaginally, but all in the hospital. And then all of a sudden, the thought of a home birth, just a home birth, is like the biggest deal. And I was so shocked by just that. That didn't make sense to me. It's not even like, it's like 2 generations. I don't, how much got lost so fast. And I really did I just trusted my body. Just like I trusted conception, just like I trusted all the growings of her organs, and I trusted sensations in my body to guide me throughout the entire pregnancy. Well, then why would I just all of a sudden not just say, oh, my body doesn't know what to do now? It never made sense to me. And to be honest, I just like really wanted the privacy of like being with myself. And that just looked like, me and Jeff, and then a friend who came to help us, because it got messy and it was long and we were tired and it was not always, beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful, but it wasn't always like the perfect video capture,
It
like
wasn't an Instagram reel.
no.
Yeah, because like choosing this path isn't all orgasms and roses. It's not, but it's like you're choosing your challenge.
Yeah.
And based off of an intuitive, centered, womb-centered place, that, oh my God, no, like my body is my compass. My womb, my heart is my compass. And I know that, like, I feel the same exasperation. It's actually called in Jungian psychology, it's called the Cassandra complex. But women are these oracular beings where it's like, I'm sure you had discussions with your mom, as I have had, like, nobody bats an eye about the cascade of interventions that almost lead to hysterectomy and like massive hemorrhaging. Nobody questions that. But for someone who's like, well, I feel safe with just me and Jeff and a friend. Whoa, 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 whoa. Like, that's insane to like even fathom. So yeah, it has shown like, and you become this Cassandra complex, which is you're seeing a truth, you're feeling a truth, you're coming to the world with that truth. And then they're like, she's wrong, like this is bad, like we don't like this medicine, it's too triggering, it's too confronting for our own selves. I need to get, and so then they'll try to like project on you to get right with their own experience, their own trauma, maybe their own birth trauma. So yeah, it's such a funny place to be, but it's, I think, the best path in my opinion. Once you get to know your body, whatever that choice is for you, it's perfect. But yeah, you got to keep your ship tight and continue to trust body, trust body, trust body.
Yeah, and I think because I was such in that framework where I was like, okay, I'm just not going to listen to anybody else's stories. I'm just going to create my own reality and my experience. But I remember like it was my first trimester and I was like so sexually like engaged. And I remember being like, Jeff, like, is this a thing? Like, why don't women talk about this? Like, this is pregnancy. Why does it have to be all the morning sickness and all that? It's like, I've never had someone tell me like how different, not better, but like how different and how good sex can be during pregnancy. And it's like, it's fascinating. It's like, I mean, whatever, that just came out, but it was like so nice to just create my own stories. And then even with the birth, it was like the most common question that women ask me is like, was it painful? And I would say, I wouldn't describe the sensations as pain at all. I was blissed out when I felt her shift, like, and I could just connect with baby. I was like, oh yes, baby's still there. And like to be in my body, I would never want numbing at all. Like I needed to feel like her head descend and crowning and like and just let it happen, but just be with it. And I wouldn't.
I would almost equate it like, see, talking from my, wise experience here, but I'd also equate it to, to the sport, or like, you run a marathon or you're doing CrossFit, you're going through pain, but like when it was done and you felt good about yourself, when you were finished, it's like, that was worth it. That didn't matter at all.
So beautiful. Yeah, and that's another thing, like all these taboos, which our culture again creates taboos. It's so stupid, but like, yeah, like pregnancy, sex, birth as a sexual experience, like being able to have maybe, yes, some sensation of like orgasm or opening or surrender during these experiences, these different sensations. Um, it's all about our languaging and how we can dismantle these narratives that we have adopted. And I think speaking more about the pleasure and the juiciness, like I loved all of a sudden having my breasts like milked by my partner, and it was just like, oh my God, this is such a turn on. But also that pregnancy style sex and like that juiciness and that gushing, it doesn't have to just stop there, like we can continue to you've just expanded yourself creatively as a mother. And it's like, well, okay, now we can expand our intimacy literacy too. Like, how can we play with more of these nuances and these subtleties that I have become so psychically and somatically aware too? So I think like it's exponential, like what you've just both gone through, like this portal. And it's like now there's so much more on the table from maiden to mother to tap into. And I work with a lot of women who postpartumly, like, yes, there's hormonal implications, like you have higher prolactin, lower dopamine. And so how do we create oxytocin infusions into the body? Because most women postpartum are like, oh, I don't even feel like, I don't want my partner to touch me. I don't want this. I don't want that. Like there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. And it's like, no, you've entered into a whole new state of womanhood. Your sexuality evolves. How are you going to be evolving with with yourself and with your partner? And these are, I think, the questions that need to start being asked, because when we have curiosity and we don't just, inherit the narrative, that's when life becomes really magical and fun and juicy. And it seems like you two have really found such a flow in this experience of like exploring way more of yourself and finding yourself, the contours of yourself through these big life transitions.
I was curious. I was wondering with the state of the world today and women's health and like obesity being such a big issue, and I think something that we see a lot of in the more spiritual side is almost like a hyper femininity, where it's so feminine. There's no masculine output. It's not like, you don't see a lot of like, I'm just gonna like lift this heavy thing, or like I'm gonna do a sport for fun, even just to stay active, or like run, or in some ways like physicality has been stripped from women almost completely. That if you weren't in the, secondary, like high school sport realm, that's almost where it drops off. So some women, if they're involved physically at that time, they might carry it through, but if they're not at all, it's just gone from their lives completely. And then another piece of that, I guess it's two separate things, is the physicality and movement piece for women, and then the hyper femininity that we see a lot of, where it's like, it's so soft. It's half an hour gratitude practices, and not to say any of those things are bad, because like, hell, I can get down
We
with
do
that.
it.
We do it. And like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like we're with our people and our friends, and it's like, it's just too soft for what we're doing right now. This is too feminine.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
then
It's hard to find.
they're like, oh my gosh, like this is too much masculinity going on right now. And it's just like, oh geez, like you're so deep into it. It's like they need to get pulled out. They need, like, I almost picture like the Fabio like romance book cover, long hair, blonde dude, Jack Chisel comes and just sweeps them off their feet, and they're just like, they need that like blast of masculine influx to like just infuse in their body.
I love that you're speaking to this because, well, first off, one of my favorite quotes is I think from Alan Watts, and he's like, spirituality needs a beer and a belch. It's so true, because it's like we can get so dogmatic and so like strict and protocol based, and then then this idea of, or like the archetype of like the spiritual person is like really like feminine and flowy, and I could never relate to that. Like, even when people, I work with a lot of athletic women, when they think about like femininity, they're like, oh, it just seems ridiculous. Like, it seems woo woo and ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, I can totally get why you see that. I did say the exact same thing. I'm sure Dariya did too. It's like, ugh, no thanks. But when we can, I think the beauty is showing a woman that you can lift some rocks and it feels really, really good. And then you can also give yourself a vulva massage and breast massage, and that feels really, really good. It's like, okay, now we're like, that sultry dance between my masculine and my feminine. That's like the hottest thing ever. Like, oh, I can still go get like tossed in winter swell and like charge a big wave and get that adrenaline rush. Like, oh yeah, and then I can go, connect with my womb and like dance and flow and be all like swirly twirly feminine. Like, great, right? Like, but the thing is that every human gets to find their own unique expression of that masculine and feminine. But when we try to then, like continually, like right now I'm in a double yin sandwich of like, I'm not surfing, and I'm like the most femme I've ever been, and I'm like, Rob, my man, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Like, I want to like move fast and like, do some like hardcore stuff. And he's like, just enjoy this like loungy cat phase. And I'm like, okay, I will. But like, I can't wait to get back to like the heart, like my handstands and like all of that. And I think that physicality is so important to teach women, not only for like just bone density and muscular health and like confidence, but also for just a sense of like how much they can make impact in the world through their physicality. It's like, it's so great, but you can have both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So I love that you spoke to that, especially with men too. Like, a lot of men here in like Southern California are in that like maybe hyper feminine state. And I actually love when I meet like my man and like one of my girlfriend's dudes. They're in the spiritual game, but they're still like jujitsuing or like hammering stuff and like I'm like, ooh, that's such a hot combo. So I love that you brought that up because I think it's important. It's like we got to get muddy and primal and it's like infuse it all in, like swirl it all about.
Well, it's almost on both ends of that extreme, the extreme male masculine and extreme female and the feminine, they're both leading to a burnout point. Because, you know, just look at the UFC, like eventually your reign is going to come to an end. Like, so if you're the top athlete, eventually someone's going to be younger. Like our bodies betray us at a certain point. And, you know, same with the feminine, if you're just giving, and you know, you've made yourself the matriarch and just sacrificed everything for everybody else, or you're the man who's, you know, sacrificing yourself for your tribe, like they both end early. So they're both like a form of burnout or early ending to that story. Like neither of them, like you need that balance. That's that like middle way.
Middle path, the lions roar. And yeah, and I would say those are like the distortions of it, but like you can get so soft and puddly within the feminine that you're like, all right, I need the structure again. I need that riverbed. Because yeah, it can get you can just keep feeling and embodying and like into a puddle of goo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny.
A question I'm holding right now is like the ways that I limit myself by being like, okay, well, you taught yoga, so you can't lift weights, or you know, you teach wilderness skills, so you can't have any sexuality then, or like, you know, you're a mom, but you can't also like want to run a successful business. And it's like, this thread has been in my psyche for like the past few weeks, just like I limit myself by just like creating this one identity, I guess. And it's like,
Caricature.
or a character. And it's like, what if I just really released that and could just find true freedom and my own version of all of those things? But it's like, I love the diversity of experiences and yet I still find myself trying to create this like one identity, for lack of a better word, or like I call this other that I call her nature girl, this like this one character that I was like, if nothing aligns with nature girl's persona, oh no, Dariya, you cannot, you can't even dabble in that. And I still find myself like working with that, the limitations I create when I try and show up, I guess. I don't know.
No, I get you. I think it's like our conditioning to try to categorize ourselves and like, but once you realize again, when there's only two options, you know you're in wound. You're operating out of some kind of narrative that actually doesn't speak to your soul, like doesn't speak to who you are as Dariya. And so like the work I teach is like there's a reason that story is coming up and because the story is the scaffold over the emotion. So there's some emotion in there that needs we need to go into deeply to feel it. And once we do, the scaffold disintegrates and what's left is endless creative potential. Like, and that's when like the little desire is put into the body. You're like, no, actually, I really desire to have this beautiful feminine led business where I nurture my babies. Well, especially have a nurturing sense with myself and that's the desire. Okay, how can I like get the abundance and the resources to do that and the playfulness? So yeah, those stories are the scaffolds over a deeper emotional calling that might need to be explored. And that's like a lot of the work that I do. All in the psyche.
Yeah. Well, I would love to have you share about, just say there's a woman who is listening and is quite disconnected to her cycle. you know, she started bleeding, nobody, you know, nobody guided her into this initiation of a ritual or a ceremony with her moon, with her blood. What are ways that maybe you yourself kind of engage in that, or work with women who are disconnected to their menstrual cycles, and yeah, just invitations for them to explore deepening that relationship?
Yeah, well, first off, I would say like yes, we don't have guidance or celebration when monarchy happens. Um, and I, I pray that that begins to change. I'm actually writing a course for young women right now, because I really want to start guiding like 11 to 15-year-olds on like, just even connecting with their vulvas and seeing it and being like, it's all okay. And like what your blood is and all of that stuff. But if a, well, first off, like get off hormonal birth control and get yourself like a fertility awareness method book and just start understanding your basic physiology. Like when you do bleed, and what does ovulation mucus look like, and what does your luteal phase look like from a basic physiology aspect. Like there's so much information out there now. Um, and that's all good and great, but then there's like the emotional level, which blows out all of the physiology out of the water, because once you start connecting to your womb space during your bleed, it becomes this psychedelic portal of creation. And the deeper you go into that, the bigger swing on the other side into your ovulation, where you're able to be a feminine business leader and a mom and a partner, and like just an amplification of everything that you are as a woman. Um, so I would start with the basic physiology and then start breathing into your womb each time you bleed, actually, not even when you bleed, just when you are sitting in the car, maybe placing your hand over your belly, just coming back to some type of coherence with what is held between the bones of your pelvis. She is sentient, and she is calling for you, and she's always choosing you. So how can you begin to choose her even in this moment right now, connecting with this space? There's endless potential there. There's endless amplification. And it really begins with, yeah, I would say that understanding your cycle and your bleed is the way in. Um, and from there, you can then start learning how to eat and nourish for luteal phase, for bleeding, for follicular, for ovulation. Um, Women's health just cannot be compartmentalized. It's so multifaceted, and it's an art, and there's a creative energy behind it. So start tending to those cycles, and oof, you're a force to be reckoned with. Womanhood doesn't have to be a burden. I think it's like such a gift to be a woman and to embody that.
Mhm.
I like how you said it's an art. Yeah, your body, your life's gonna be a canvas, so you have to be creative with it. And yeah, like just being in touch with your body to be different for everybody. Someone might, like, it's cheesy. I'm not gonna like put my hand on my belly or whatever. Maybe they'll pray, or maybe you know, maybe they'll be like, okay, well, like I'll lie in bed and just like breathe for like 20 seconds. Or like there's a way to make it your own and paint that picture, and then, paint that story that you want to see in your mind's eye, like where your finish line is, or where your like best life is. If it's family with kids and you're just at home, doing your thing, or if it's traveling, or if it's grandkids, whatever that picture you've created in your mind. Like there's a way to paint that future you desire by choosing what you do every day in your own creative way. Because Yeah, some people aren't gonna like CrossFit, and some people aren't gonna like nature skills, but someone's gonna be like, yeah, I can get out and garden for 20 minutes a day, or like I could do this, or it doesn't matter what it is. There's an outlet for everybody to find something that's gonna hit all those little like check mark boxes. Like how do I get in touch with my feminine? There's one for you. Like find it, check it off. Like your physicality, the food. It might be vegetarian, might be meat, it might be who knows. Like it could just be you might be the first person to do breatharian in your family. I don't know, but like there's something for everybody to create that potential they want to see.
Totally. The only thing I would say, Jeff, is that the feminine can't, it's not a checkbox. It's like you cannot, because you can't nail it down, right? It's like Jello. It's like this like ephemeral, like it's a feeling. And so it's like, what's the feeling that you want to move into? The feeling you desire. And like that's the desire fulfilled ultimately. And so yeah, I think it does, and this is really what I want to get across is that like, yeah, there's cycle syncing, which I call dry pussy cycle syncing. And then there's like really juicy cycle syncing, which is I'm in touch with what does my womb actually want? Like, oh, I want to like go play. I want to put my feet in the grass, right? That there's the feeling. I want to feel that sensation. Like, oh, I want to have like really juicy like self pleasure or like partner connected pleasure in the my follicular phase. Like we women can get in touch with the feeling rather than like the heady like goal setting. It's like no. We get to be in the feeling space, and that's an awesome place to be and to play from and to make, like you said, paint your canvas. I love that.
I only
Yeah.
know the masculine side. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'm just like, yeah, I think you beautifully stated it that it's everybody's own journey, and we can only just like plant like little seeds, and then we get to play with how to make that our own. Once we're given that permission of getting out of I'm a mother, oh, I'm a wife, oh, how can I be a business person? How can I, right? We're getting out of those story scaffolds. You're breaking them down. So beautiful.
Well, and speaking of that, like getting out of your head and into just like feeling and like emotional states, that was another reason with the birth that I I remember like just being lost in time. I had no idea. Like I kept my eyes closed for hour. Like I don't even know. I know that it was roughly 28 hours. I did not know that at the time. I remember just like opening my eyes once and I was like, the sun is setting. Oh no. Like what's up? I was so in a different space. And then once she emerged, I remember I was like, it was like I was really gone to somewhere else. Like it was like a very strong high. Like it was so intense. Like I remember just speaking to that. I was like, I'm like not here. Like I'm in this other place of like almost like a psychedelic experience. I was gone in this. I don't even have words for it actually. It's quite challenging for me to find words, but I was literally just like eyes were closed. I didn't want any, like I never timed a contraction. There was no watches, nothing, in that part of I just got lost in sensation and in just like, okay, I'm present, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And then we made it to the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. And I would say that skill, that like, which is literally a skill, is, and I mean, obviously, I haven't gone through the birth portal, so like, amazing. There are pieces I can take from that of like helping a woman when, let's say, there's like some sexual blockages, you were so deep within yourself, in your feeling body, in your sensatorial body, that nothing else existed. And you're so in tune with that and like how to play with that energy or be in that energy, it was like that, what a deep surrender. And that can also, in my contention, that can happen during a sexual experience when we're so deep inside of ourselves, right? And that is embodiment. That right there is embodiment. And that's a practice that we get to cultivate daily. And I'm sure, like, of course, the birth portal is going to be like, ooh, wildly like intense, and the veil is so thin, and it is a psychedelic experience. But yeah, there are pieces of that that we can employ and bring with us into motherhood. That being, you can be so deep in your own sensation and know so deeply that you're safe in that place. No wonder you're having all these like expansive, creative, like juicy times. You've opened a portal and you know how to surrender to it now. Like, oh, like, thank you.
And it's neat. Well, maybe that's not the right word, but like, it's interesting to see how a woman's birth experience truly can shape who she becomes after. And, there's women who come to me asking, they're so curious about my story. Women who've had, 4 C-sections, and I can't relate to them, but I can understand how you do anything is how you do everything, but how you birth, how, like, it was a birthing of, my first baby, and also a new birthing of myself. And there is this like extra layer of confidence that comes after that experience. It's like, yeah, you can think whatever you want of me, but I'm so rooted in my power. I don't care. It's like an extra layer of that, it's, yeah, it's a very neat place to be after, all those other versions and whatever.
You're
Yeah.
making me so pumped up right now.
Yeah.
Excited. I'm like,
It-
yeah, just thank you two for being on your journey and really choosing to live in alignment with what you felt intuitively. It's not easy in our culture. But this is why you're leaders in what you're doing. And it's so admirable because it's very challenging in our culture to go against, to swim a different stream.
Mhm. Well, maybe before we wrap up, do you want to share about, your journey, your connection with your womb, changes in your body, maybe someone who's not pregnant, and as we say, like, changing these scripts, changing these stories of what it can be, to experience, whatever pregnancy, or just another story of what pregnancy can be. Do you want to share a little bit about your journey?
Sure. I would say the reason I got catapulted into this work was because of an abortion experience I had when I was 27. And I've had to, that's come up a lot of times during this pregnancy of like, wow, I'm so thankful that I was able to actually like get an abortion, because the person I was with, like, it would have been so life destroying. Like, I would have died with that person and trying to have a baby. Like, oh my God. So there's this one part of me that's so thankful for that experience. But then there's this other part of me that was like, I was so traumatized from that experience. Like, and that's because, and actually it's bringing up more of my medicine, because it really showed me that we as women were only given like 2 options in our culture, which is, again, remember, we're in wound when there's only 2 options:
Mm.
pharmaceuticals or reproductive surgery. And I have become the person that I wish I knew at that 27-year-old self, like the one who has, oh my God, there's so many more resources and options available to you, so that this doesn't have to be this really ultra traumatic experience that you completely get numbed out from. And that goes the same for any kind of birth trauma. That goes the same for any kind of sexual assault. That goes for the same of like any kind of pelvic health issue you're having. There's a massive world out there of resources and healing that's available to you. And so too, that can be for pregnancy. Pregnancy is a healing state. When you come into it, And I love working with like women for preconception. When you come into it fully nourished, when you come into it understanding the deconstruction and reconstruction you and your partner are going to have to go through to connect deeper, and the communication and commitment that's going to be needed there. The healing you can do around your tissues, particularly your cervix, because most women have had some kind of trauma and cervical scar to their cervix, their cervices, and how much you can rehydrate all of that tissue. And pregnancy is like this. I've been so blessed because I feel like I've done a ton of groundwork prior to this and have this womb awareness and a knowing of my intuition. Um, this has been one of the most healing times of my life. All the parts of me that, and the stories or the narratives, mother wounds, father wounds, really claiming how my intention for birth and my birth experience. It's been the most healing time, even down to, I remember like falling on my tailbone in college, and I could feel it. I was getting the care I needed, like doing some intraanal work to like move my coccyx and like restore it back to its position. I feel like my joints and ligaments have healed. Um, I've deepened my relationship with my partner, my relationship with God or source and goddess, you know. So um there's just so much more out there available for women that we know. The menu has been presented as just these two things, but I'm here to help expand that whole menu, and what's available in a woman's body. She's regenerative, she is healing, she is powerful, she is creative, she is an amplifier. We are medicinal. And so don't just stop. There's a vast cosmos beyond what the story we've been given. Um, and yeah, my journey has been great, and I'm really excited and nervous and have all the emotions leading up to the birth portal. And I know I have amazing cheerleaders to be with me as I go through that. So yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Thank
I love witnessing, I don't know, pregnant. I felt like when I was pregnant, I felt so good in my body. I felt, yeah, again, just like confident. I still felt super able. I did feel like quite radiant and energized. Like I loved being pregnant. I see pregnant women and I get, I smile. I do that. I'm just so excited. It's, I find pregnant women just so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much life force like pulsing through them. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, before we close off, I'll just say I had a previous relationship where there was several miscarriages, and that was really traumatic, and that caused almost a wound to my feminine, and it
Mm.
really closed me down to a lot of things. But like with this birth and everything we went through, it like I would say it healed that trauma that I had, because there was definitely a lot of, you know, as you can imagine, all the things that for a man or a woman, I think it's similar. The questions that come up, you want to blame yourself. You want to, there's so many things, and it's so important that people like you are out there being almost a lighthouse or a beacon, because there's so much to unpack that our society doesn't allow us to unpack. And then when I went through those experiences with a previous partner, you realize it's almost like a silent epidemic. And it's just like you said, with so much of the work that you're doing, it's like everyone's just suffering in silence, and it's like a taboo to talk about, that no one wants to even speak or acknowledge it happening. And then it's almost like a world war that no one mentions, and it's like all just like brushed under the carpet, and then we all live with the shell shock of it, but no one wants to admit it, that's causing all these problems in our society or our group consciousness as a whole.
Totally.
Yeah, like kudos to you for doing that work.
Well, like Jeff, thank you for speaking to like, yeah, the masculine experience and like the rite of passage from into fatherhood. Like that's huge. And like the work that's done and even your own your father that wasn't around and then like you being like this fully present father, like, oh my God. Like talk about changing the world. Like it's so amazing.
We
Thanks.
all got trauma to heal. There's no shortage.
Yeah, right?
So I guess you want to give the website, how people
Yeah.
can find you, the work, yeah, all your contact info.
Yeah, I'm Maiden Medicine, so MAIDEN dash medicine.com. That's my whole website is up there. I do integrative pelvic care. I do online work. I have a group program that's really awesome, but I won't be running until next year. And then I have like self-guided master classes there. And I'm going to be doing some more work, dropping like a young women's course and a couple's like yoni lingam massage, like sultry evening, coming up in November. So yeah, that's where I'm at. You can also find me on Instagram and I have a newsletter. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Well, thank
Right
you so
on.
much, Emily.
Thanks for having me.